Before we begin, drop a comment telling us what city you're reading this from. And when the story ends, don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10. And be sure to follow our channel for more stories like this one. Now, settle in and enjoy every detail. The reluctant return. The black, impeccably polished Range Rover snaked along the winding road leading into Willow Creek, Vermont, reflecting the late afternoon sun on its tinted glass. Julian Vance adjusted his sunglasses, gripping the leather steering wheel tighter than necessary. 15 years building an empire in New York City, forging his name among the titans of business. And now, at 35, he was forced to return to the small town he had sworn never to set foot in again. The ancient trees flanking the road looked identical to those of his youth, like silent sentinels attesting to his reluctant homecoming. "Mr. Vance, the meet-in with the Willow Creek Tech Board has been confirmed for 9 a.m. tomorrow." Sarah, his personal assistant, chimed through the car's Bluetooth system, sharp and professional as ever. "Thank you, Sarah. Prepare the acquisition documents and ensure the lawyers are on standby," Julian replied with a dry, distant tone, the voice he had adopted over the years, devoid of any personal emotion. The truth was, the acquisition of Willow Creek Tech was just a facade, a corporate excuse. The real reason for his return lay in the will of his grandmother, Grandma Eleanor, who had passed away just a month ago. As her final wish, the matriarch stipulated that Julian must remain in Willow Creek for at least 3 months to receive his inheritance, a fortune sizable even by his current standards. The town center appeared on the horizon, virtually untouched by time. The same cobblestone main square, the same towering white church that had always felt too large for such a small place, the same quaint shop selling old-fashioned goods. It was as if time had stopped, preserving every memory he had tried desperately to erase. Julian parked in front of the Willow Creek Inn, the only luxury establishment in town. Before he could exit, his phone vibrated. It was Isabel, his fiancée. "Darling, don't forget our engagement dinner next month. Guest list needs finalizing. I miss you, my love." He pocketed the phone without replying. Isabel represented everything he had achieved in NYC. Refinement, status, impeccable business connections. A perfect marriage on paper, but lately, it had led him to question his choices, to feel an emptiness that not even his success could fill. He decided to take a walk to familiarize himself with the area, or perhaps to challenge the ghosts of his past. Impeccably dressed in an Italian suit that contrasted with the town's relaxed atmosphere, he strolled down the main street. Some familiar faces watched him with curiosity, but no one dared approach. His cold, closed-off expression discouraged any attempt at familiarity. It was when he passed the Cloud Creamery that his world stopped dead. Through the glass, fogged by the sweet, cold air, he saw Amelia Hayes, as beautiful as she was in his most painful memories. Her dark brown hair still fell in soft waves over her shoulders, and her smile, that smile that had haunted him on countless lonely nights, was the same, capable of lighting up a gloomy day. But that wasn't what made his heart leap. Beside her, holding her hand, was a boy of about 5 years old. A boy with the same intense green eyes and the same determined chin that Julian saw every morning in the mirror. Time seemed to freeze. Amelia looked up and saw him. The smile vanished from her lips, replaced by an expression of shock and something deeper, something he hadn't seen in years. Fear. The boy, oblivious to the sudden tension, tugged on her hand, excitedly pointing at the ice cream flavors. Julian felt his legs weaken. All the walls he had built over the years, all the coldness he had cultivated, all the control that defined his existence, crumbled in an instant. Questions exploded in his mind like fireworks. Why had she never said anything? How could she hide something so monumental? Without thinking, he took a step toward the creamery door. Amelia quickly scooped the boy into her arms and headed toward the back of the shop. When Julian finally entered, they had vanished through the staff door. A young employee approached, smiling with an innocence that contrasted with his torment. "Can I help you with anything, sir?" Julian stared at the door through which Amelia had fled, his world spinning. "No," he replied automatically, his voice barely audible. "No, you cannot." He left the creamery in a daze, his mind replaying the image of the boy over and over. 6 years after leaving Willow Creek, he discovered he hadn't just run from a broken heart. He had abandoned a son whose existence he didn't even know. That night, alone in his luxurious suite, Julian Vance, the ruthless CEO who had built an empire from scratch, cried for the first time in years. The 3 months he was required to spend in Willow Creek had just taken on an entirely new meaning, and he knew his life would never be the same. What would you do if you discovered such a shocking secret after so much time? Share your thoughts in the comments. T2. The weight of secrets. The night dragged on like an eternity. Julian sat on his balcony with an untouched glass of whiskey, allowing himself, for the first time in years, to dive into the memories he had worked so hard to suppress. Summer 2018. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming magnolias when he met Amelia at the municipal library, where she worked as a book restorer. He could still see her clearly, balanced atop a stepladder, reaching for a dusty volume. "Need help?" he asked. And when she turned, smiling with a mix of surprise and charm, something inside him changed forever. His phone vibrated, bringing him back. It was Isabel again. "Julian, darling, that's 2 unanswered texts. Is everything okay? I'm a little worried." He slid the phone aside, unable to deal with the reality of his engagement. How could he explain to Isabel that he had just discovered he had a son? How could he justify that the entire future they had planned could collapse in an instant? The next morning, he hadn't slept a wink. At 8:45 a.m., he was impeccably dressed for the meeting at Willow Creek Tech, but his mind was miles away from any corporate acquisition. "Mr. Vance," Sarah intercepted him in the lobby. "I've brought the revised documents and—" "Cancel the meeting," he interrupted abruptly, his voice sharp. "But sir, the shareholders—" "Reschedule it for next week." His voice allowed no argument. Without waiting for a response, Julian drove to his grandmother's house, now his inheritance. In the back garden, he found Mrs. Diaz, the housekeeper who had served his family for decades. "I knew you'd come back," the old woman said with an enigmatic smile. "Eleanor always said you'd find your way home." "Mrs. Diaz." Julian hesitated, Amelia's name catching in his throat. The housekeeper's expression shifted subtly. "Ah, so you know about little Leo." The name hit Julian like a punch to the gut. Leo. His son had a name, an identity he was unaware of. "Why did no one tell me?" Mrs. Diaz put down her gardening tools, looking at him with a mixture of compassion and reproach. "Your grandmother tried, Julian. All those calls you never returned. She wanted to tell you." The words struck him as successive waves of guilt. How many times had he ignored Grandma Eleanor's attempts to contact him, convinced they were just attempts to drag him back to the town he so resented? "Amelia tried to find you too," Mrs. Diaz continued, "in the early months. But you changed all your contacts. You completely vanished." The memory of those days assailed him. The devastating argument, the harsh words exchanged, his impulsive departure for NYC. He had blocked Amelia's number, changed his email, cut all possible ties, convinced that this would erase the pain. "She was pregnant when I left," he murmured. "And she didn't even know it yet," the housekeeper added. "She found out 2 weeks later. Eleanor helped her through the whole pregnancy. She became a grandmother to Leo, too." Julian slumped onto the garden bench, unable to bear the weight of the revelations. His grandmother, always so wise, had cared for his son when he was too busy building empires. A noise at the fence caught his attention. Leo was there, peering curiously through the wooden slats. For a moment, their eyes met. The same intense green eyes, the same childlike curiosity he recognized in himself. "Leo!" Amelia's voice rang out, alarmed, and the boy quickly disappeared. Julian rose impulsively, but Mrs. Diaz stopped him. "Give it time, son. You can't just barge into their lives after 6 years." "But he's my son," he protested, his voice cracking with emotion. "And for 5 years, he was only hers. Amelia raised him alone, built a life, protected that child from any pain your absence might cause. You are going to have to prove you deserve a place in their lives." The weight of that truth hit him with full force. His meticulously planned life in NYC now felt like a house of cards about to collapse. And, surprisingly, the prospect didn't frighten him as much as it should have. For the first time in 6 years, Julian Vance knew exactly where he needed to be. "What should I do, Mrs. Diaz?" The housekeeper smiled gently, returning her attention to the roses. "Start by doing the right thing for the first time in 6 years. Stay, face the past, and above all, be ready to fight for the right to be that boy's father." Julian stood where Leo had been moments before, feeling the burden of every wrong decision he had made. His phone vibrated again. Isabel, probably worried by his prolonged silence. But how could he worry about a wedding in NYC when his son was right there, a few houses away, growing up without knowing him? He picked up his phone, and for the first time in days, replied to Isabel's text. "Don't come. There's something I need to tell you, and I need to do it in person when I return." The response was immediate. "What are you talking about? What is happening?" Julian watched Amelia and Leo disappear around the corner before replying. "The truth. Do you think Julian can win Amelia's forgiveness and his son's trust? Leave your opinion in the comments." 3. The inevitable choice. The next morning brought renewed determination. Julian woke before dawn and went for a run, something he hadn't done in years. His steps unconsciously led him to Oak Street, where Amelia lived. The modest 2-story Victorian house was silent, an oasis of tranquility. A small red child's bicycle lay on the front lawn, along with scattered toys, unmistakable signs of Leo's presence. "Looking for something, Mr. Vance?" The deep voice startled him. Mr. Robert Hayes, Amelia's father, stood on his porch, holding a steaming cup of coffee. His eyes, once always friendly, now conveyed a calculated coldness. "Mr. Hayes, Chief Hayes to you," the older man interrupted, his voice frigid. "You lost that right a long time ago." Julian swallowed. Mr. Hayes had been like a father to him during his years with Amelia. Now, the resentment in his voice was palpable, an unbreachable wall. "I need to talk to her." "No, you don't," Mr. Hayes replied, walking down the porch steps. "What you need is to go back to your life in NYC and leave my daughter and my grandson alone." "He's my son too," Julian protested, his voice edged with desperation. "Son?" Mr. Hayes let out a humorless laugh. "A father doesn't abandon his family, Vance. A father doesn't vanish for 6 years without a trace." "I didn't know!" Julian burst out, his voice echoing down the silent street. "How could I have known if no one told me?" "Keep your voice down," Mr. Hayes hissed, glancing worriedly toward Amelia's house. "Come with me." They walked in silence to the Hearthside Cafe on the corner. The aroma of fresh pastry and coffee filled the air, a comforting contrast to the tension between them. "Do you know why Amelia could never tell you?" Mr. Hayes began, after they had sat at a secluded table. "Because that last night you said something that completely broke her." Julian frowned, trying to recall the haze of his anger. "I don't want children. I never wanted them. This small town, this quiet life, it all suffocates me. I need more. I deserve more," Mr. Hayes quoted, word for word. "That's what you shouted before you left." The memory hit Julian like a slap. The argument had been brutal, born of his frustration over Amelia's refusal to move to NYC with him, his fear of being trapped in a life he deemed small and limited. "I was angry," he mumbled. "I was young and immature, and she was pregnant, without knowing it. When she found out 2 weeks later, how was she supposed to tell you? You had made your feelings about children and small-town life crystal clear." Julian felt the weight of his guilt multiply exponentially. "But she could have tried." "She did," Mr. Hayes cut him off. "She called dozens of times, sent emails, letters. Everything bounced back. You had surrounded yourself with so many walls that you became unreachable." "Leo," Julian began hesitantly. "What is he like?" Something softened in Mr. Hayes's gaze. "Bright, curious. He has your intelligence and his mother's kind heart. He loves books like Amelia, but he's also fascinated by the world of business. Last week, he set up a lemonade stand and created a loyalty program for his customers." Julian couldn't help but smile with pride. "Does he ask about me?" "Amelia told him his father was a businessman who traveled the world," Mr. Hayes explained. "She preferred to create a story that protected him from the pain." "I need to fix this," Julian declared, his voice firm. "I need to be part of his life." "And your fiancée in NYC?" Mr. Hayes asked, catching Julian off guard. "Yes, news travels fast in Willow Creek. How does she fit into those plans?" Before he could answer, his phone vibrated. It was Isabel again. Julian sighed, the panic settling in his chest. "You have a lot to figure out, Vance," Mr. Hayes said, standing up. "But I'll tell you one thing. If you hurt Amelia or Leo again, there is no place in this world where you can hide from me." Julian remained in the cafe long after Mr. Hayes had left. He watched Amelia and Leo walk by on their way to school. The boy was happily skipping, holding his mother's hand, telling her something that made her laugh. His heart ached. In less than 24 hours, Isabel would be there, bringing all the complications of his NYC life. But looking at his son, his Leo, Julian knew some choices were already made. He picked up his phone and, for the first time in days, responded to Isabel's message. "I broke up with you last night." By phone, I know it wasn't the best way, but the response was immediate. "What are you talking about? What is happening?" Julian watched Amelia and Leo disappear around the corner before replying. "The truth. How do you think Amelia will react to the presence of Isabel? And how will this affect Leo? Leave your comments." 4. The baseball field showdown. The Willow Creek Elementary School baseball field was buzzing with the energy of uniformed children and enthusiastic parents. Julian, dressed in jeans and a casual polo, a conscious shift from his usual Italian suit, stood discreetly in the farthest bleachers, trying to be inconspicuous. Leo, wearing number 7, warmed up with his teammates. Even from a distance, Julian could see the determination on his son's face, the way he focused on each pitch, just as Julian himself had done at that age. "He's the starting pitcher," a familiar voice said beside him. Amelia sat down, maintaining a calculated distance, the scent of flowers and soap that always accompanied her. Best strike average in the minor leagues. The pride in her voice was palpable, and Julian felt a pang of regret for all the achievements he had missed. "How did he start playing?" he asked softly. Amelia hesitated before replying. "It was Grandma Eleanor's idea, actually. She used to come to all the games. She said baseball was in the Vance blood." The mention of his grandmother brought a fresh wave of guilt. How many games had she attended in his place? How many stories about Leo had she tried to share on the phone calls he never returned? The game started, and Julian watched, fascinated, as his son performed on the pitcher's mound. His posture, his concentration, even the way he adjusted his cap, were gestures that seemed to mirror his own childhood memories. "Strike!" the umpire yelled for the 3rd time, and Leo celebrated quietly, as if trying to contain his joy. "He always does that," Amelia commented, a soft smile on her lips. He says he doesn't want the other kids to feel bad. You've done an incredible job with him, Julian murmured, his voice laced with emotion, an awe he couldn't hide. Before Amelia could respond, a murmur ran through the stands. Isabel Herrera, in impeccable Chanel and heels, totally inappropriate for a baseball field, walked purposefully toward them, a tempest in the shape of a woman. "Julian Vance!" Her voice cut the air like a sharp blade, drawing everyone's attention. 3 days without returning my calls, a breakup by phone, and now I find you watching baseball in a town in the middle of nowhere. The game practically stopped. All attention focused on the unfolding scene. Leo, on the pitcher's mound, watched with curiosity, his small figure a focal point in the drama. Amelia stood up abruptly, fear in her eyes. "I'm getting a drink," she murmured, clearly uncomfortable. "No." Julian gently held her wrist, his touch firm and protective. Turning to Isabel, he spoke with a firmness that surprised everyone, including himself. "We need to talk, but not here. Not now." "Not here? Not now?" Isabel laughed incredulously, a bitter, painful laugh. "You cancel our wedding by phone and think you can— Is that your son?" She interrupted her own speech, her eyes fixed on Leo, who was still watching them from the field. The resemblance to Julian, undeniable, a visual punch that cut the air. The silence that followed was deafening. Amelia instinctively took a step forward, as if to shield Leo, even from a distance. "Yes," Julian responded simply, his voice heavy with undeniable truth. "He is my son." Isabel staggered as if slapped, her face paling. "How long have you known?" "I found out 4 days ago." "And you've already chosen?" Isabel's voice trembled, disbelief and hurt mixed together. "You've chosen this? This small life over everything we built?" "It's not a choice, Isabel," Julian responded softly, with a serenity he had never felt in the NYC boardroom. "It's a course correction, something I should have done a long time ago." Tears streamed down Isabel's perfectly made-up face. "You'll regret this, Julian, when the novelty wears off, when you realize everything you're throwing away." "No," he interrupted, his voice firm and absolute. "My only regret is that it took me so long to understand what truly matters." Isabel took one last look at Leo, then at Amelia, and finally at Julian. Without another word, she turned on her heels and left, leaving only the echo of her steps in the tense silence. The game slowly resumed, but Leo seemed to have lost some concentration. His next pitch was a ball, a rarity for his standards. "He noticed," Amelia whispered, the tension of the confrontation still visible on her face. "The resemblance, the argument. He's not stupid, Julian." As if to confirm her words, Leo looked directly toward them, between pitches. His green eyes, the Vance eyes, filled with unasked questions. "I need to tell him," Amelia decided, her voice trembling slightly. "Tonight. I can't let him hear it from other people." Julian's heart pounded. "You want me to—" "No," she cut him off. "Let me do it. He needs to hear it from me first. Then we'll see." The rest of the game passed in a haze. Leo recovered enough to secure his team's victory, but his celebration was subdued, his eyes constantly returning to the stands where Julian was. When the game ended, Amelia stood up. "I'm going to get him. Please." "Don't try, not today. He'll need time to process everything." Julian nodded, his heart torn between the desire to rush to his son and the awareness that he needed to respect Leo's time. "Amelia," he called after her. Tell him I'm proud of him, of today's game, of who he is, of everything." She paused for a moment, and Julian swore he saw tears in her eyes before she turned and continued toward their son. That night, alone in his grandmother's mansion, Julian found a photo album she kept hidden in her desk. page after page of moments from Leo's life. His first day of school, birthdays, baseball games. Moments his grandmother had treasured, waiting for the day he would finally be ready to see them. "I'm sorry, Grandma," he murmured into the silence of the house, feeling the weight of her wise, strong spirit wrap around him with unconditional love. "But I promise I'm going to fix everything." His phone buzzed, the NYC office again. This time, he didn't even bother to look at the message. Some priorities, after all, were crystal clear. If you think Julian made the right choice leaving Isabel and his empire, drop a like and a comment. Do you think Leo will accept him easily? V. The breakfast of truth. The night after the baseball game stretched like an eternity. Julian stayed awake, imagining the conversation between Amelia and Leo, visualizing the expressions, the questions, the potential tears. When the sun finally rose, his phone vibrated with a message from Amelia. "He wants to see you." Breakfast at the Hearthside Cafe, a Willow Creek classic. Julian found himself seated at one of the Formica tables, his hands trembling slightly as he waited. The doorbell chimed, and Leo walked in, holding Amelia's hand tightly. His eyes, identical to his father's, were slightly red, a sign of a bad night's sleep. "Good morning," Amelia said softly, guiding Leo to the table. The boy sat opposite Julian, studying him with a surprising intensity. The silence that followed was deafening, filling the space between the aroma of churros and fresh coffee. "Are you really my dad?" Leo finally asked, his voice small, but firm, breaking the tension. Julian swallowed, feeling a lump form in his throat. "Yes, I am. Why didn't you come to see me before?" The question hit Julian like a punch to the gut. "Because I made a very, very big mistake," Julian answered with brutal honesty. I didn't know about you, but that's no excuse. I should have been here." Leo frowned, processing the information with the seriousness of a little philosopher. "Grandma Eleanor sometimes talked about you. She said you built very big buildings in New York." "Yes, that's true." Julian smiled sadly. "Your grandmother was a very special woman. She came to all my games," Leo continued. "She said I played just like you when you were little." The waitress approached, momentarily breaking the tension. Leo ordered pancakes with chocolate syrup, exactly what Julian used to order as a child. "Mom says you're going to stay in Willow Creek now," the boy commented, playing with his napkin. "If you want me to," Julian replied softly. "I would love to get to know you better, Leo, to be part of your life." "Chris," the boy corrected. "Everyone calls me Chris, except when I'm in trouble. Then Mom uses my full name." Amelia laughed softly, the first sign of relaxation that morning. The breakfast proceeded slowly, with Chris asking occasional questions about NYC, baseball, and Julian's life. When it was time for Chris to leave for school, he surprised Julian with a quick, shy hug before running off to the car. "He's amazing," Julian murmured, watching them drive away. His phone vibrated once more, a message from the board. "Voting complete. Replacement approved. Your lawyers will be contacted." Julian pocketed the phone, a serene smile on his face. The company that had taken him years to build. The empire that meant so much. It all seemed insignificant compared to the hug he had just received. That afternoon, teaching Chris the secrets of the perfect pitch, Julian Vance finally understood what his grandmother had been trying to tell him all those years. Some fortunes are not measured in dollars. "Dad!" Chris called out, trying the word for the first time, his voice sweet and natural. "Show me that pitch again?" And in that moment, Julian knew he had made the right decision. What do you think Julian will do now that he's lost his company? How will Amelia react to the news of his resignation? Comment below. 6. The hidden legacy and the final choice. The news of the fall of the Vance Empire spread quickly through Willow Creek, but none of it mattered compared to the afternoons on the baseball field with Chris. 2 weeks after the Hearthside Cafe breakfast, while organizing documents in his grandmother's study, Julian found an old box carefully sealed with Grandma Eleanor's elegant handwriting. "I thought you'd never find this," Mrs. Diaz commented, carrying a tea tray. "Your grandmother prepared it in the last months of her life." Julian opened the box. Inside, he found letters, dozens of them, all addressed to him, but never sent. The first was dated 6 years ago. "Dear Julian, I met your son today. Amelia was scared and alone, but Leo is the most extraordinary child I have ever seen. He has your eyes, your smile, and that same determination you always showed. I beg you, come home. There is so much you need to know." Tears blurred his vision as he read letter after letter, each detailing precious moments of Chris's life that he had missed. Just then, Amelia appeared in the doorway, pale and agitated. "Julian, we need to talk. Now." Something in her voice made Julian stand up immediately. "What happened?" "Chris found some old letters in the attic. Letters I wrote to you during the pregnancy." Amelia's voice trembled. "They said I tried to warn you about the pregnancy, that I went to New York to find you." Julian's heart skipped a beat. "And what, Amelia?" "That I saw you there!" she burst out, tears streaming down her face. "With Isabel. You looked so happy, so perfect. I was 4 months pregnant, using all the money I had to find you. And when I finally did, you were engaged to her." The memory struck Julian like a slap. The engagement party on the rooftop of the Phoenix Hotel, 5.5 years ago. He had just met Isabel, but the event had already been arranged to solidify his image. "Why did you never tell me that?" "Because you seemed to have moved on," Amelia cried. "Because I didn't want to be the small-town girl who ruined your perfect life. Because you still loved me," Julian finished softly. The silence that followed was deafening. "Chris read the letters," Amelia continued. "He knows everything now. About how we met, how we fell in love, how we broke up, how I gave up on telling you about him. Matt, where is he?" "At the baseball field. He said he needed to think." Julian didn't hesitate. "I'm going to talk to him." "Julian!" Amelia called as he headed to the car. "He found this too." She held out a small velvet box. Inside was the engagement ring he had bought for her 15 years ago, the week before their big fight. "You kept it. Some things are hard to let go of," she murmured. At the baseball field, Chris sat alone in the bleachers, a pile of yellowed letters beside him. "Can I sit down?" Julian asked softly. The boy shrugged, but moved to make room. "Did you love Mom?" Chris asked after a long silence. "More than anything," Julian replied with honesty. "And now?" "Now I understand that some loves never truly leave. They just wait for the right moment to come back." Chris picked up one of the letters. "Mom wrote that you were the love of her life, that she hoped I'd have your smile and your heart. And you do." Julian smiled sadly. "You have the best of both of us." "Are you going to leave again?" "Never," Julian replied firmly. "Not even if every building in New York depends on it." Chris leaned in, resting his head on his father's shoulder. "Promise." "I promise," Julian whispered, holding his son close. Some choices once made are forever. 7. The wedding and a new beginning. The spring brought not only blooming flowers, but also a wave of change. Hayes Vance Tech, as the company was now called, began construction on its new headquarters in the center of Willow Creek, transforming an abandoned lot into a symbol of renewal. Julian and Amelia decided to hold a simple wedding in June at Emerald Lake, under the ancient oak tree where they first met. On the wedding day, Chris walked down the aisle first, carrying the rings with comical seriousness. Then, everyone stood as Amelia appeared, escorted by her father. Julian felt his heart stop. Amelia was stunning, but it wasn't just her physical beauty that moved him. It was everything she represented. His first love, the mother of his son, his second chance. "I love you, Amelia," Julian began, his voice breaking. "I spent years building an empire without realizing my true treasure was here. You gave me the greatest gift anyone could receive, our son. And now you are giving me a second chance to make it right. I promise to spend the rest of my life deserving this love." Amelia dried a tear before beginning her vows. "Julian, they say we can't rewrite the past, but we can choose how our story continues. I choose you, today and forever, to write every new chapter together." When it was time for the rings, Chris presented them with a radiant smile. "Something new," he announced, making everyone laugh. That night, after a family dinner in their new Victorian house, Chris fell asleep on the sofa. Julian found Amelia on the balcony. "I have something to tell you," she whispered. "What?" he asked, noting the special sparkle in her eyes. "It seems Chris's wish for a sibling will be granted sooner than we thought." Julian stopped dancing, his eyes wide. "Are you?" Amelia nodded, smiling through her tears of joy. And there, under the starry Vermont sky, with his son sleeping peacefully, and his wife carrying a new life, Julian Vance finally understood the true meaning of success. It wasn't the skyscrapers of New York or the bank accounts. It was the love that built, brick by brick, the story of his family. If you had to choose between the professional success of your dreams in a big city or a seemingly simpler life with those you love in your hometown, which path would you choose and why? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below, letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.